town. There you go. There's nothing that'll put a good crimp in your worship like church. You know what? I mean, really, think about it. You know? All right. We're going to go ahead and get started here so we have plenty of time, because normally I think I'm not going to take a long time, and then I start calling. So I'm going to get started so we can make sure we get through everything. Because some of what we're going to do tonight is a video. And in this video, it's actually 15 minutes. So some of you have already seen it. But it's actually a 15-minute video. So I'm going to do a little bit, bring up a few scriptures, and talk about the subject matter. Then we'll watch a video, and then we will talk a little more about us here in America, where we are today. We're going to talk about being courageous, okay, and not having an emotional commitment, but a courageous commitment, and what the difference is. And I think we're seeing it more and more in our modern history that Christians have had an emotional commitment to their faith. Now, there have been times throughout world history that Christians have definitely shown, in America, have definitely shown a courageous commitment. But I think we've been blessed so much, it's kind of like Israel. When Israel was blessed, they started to falter. And so I think over a period of time in the American church, we've seen an emotional commitment. And what happens with an emotional commitment is emotions go up and down. And so when you're feeling good, it's praise the Lord, I'm blessed and highly favored. But when you're feeling bad, it's yes, beep, 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 so beep, I'm gonna beep, you know, and you're praying for some bail money. You know what I mean? So anyway, so we're going to talk about courageous commitment versus emotional commitment. And to do that, we're going to begin with what most of us know as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which that was their names given to them by Nebuchadnezzar. But Daniel's name was Belteshazzar or something of that nature, but we still call him Daniel. But we don't call them by their original names for some reason. So, but anyways, we know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So we'll look at Daniel chapter 3, verse 16. Many of us in this place, we know what's taking place here. Nebuchadnezzar had already built the statue. He had already built the idol. And he had made it a law that at a certain time, when you hear a certain music playing, that, you bow down and worship the statue. And we know, obviously, that these three did not bow. And so Nebuchadnezzar finds out about this, and he brings them before him, and he addresses the issue. And he says, look, you know what the law is? You're breaking the law. And which is an interesting thing, because I know some of you have heard me talk about this before, but for those who haven't, I want to say it again, because I think it's very interesting that this idol was not built in a day. This was a pretty big idol. It wasn't built in a day. It was a process of time. There was, first an idea had to be conceived, and then planning had to be conceived, and how to build it, the materials needed, the artists need to be gathered that were capable of doing it. And so my point of bringing that up is to say there was a process involved. There was planning involved. And so then as the ground is being prepared, and as the statue is beginning to be erected piece by piece, little by little, I am sure that there was talk going around the kingdom. Hey, did you hear what's happening over there? Did you hear what Nebuchadnezzar's doing? Did you hear that we're going to have to bow down? Did you hear? And so the talk started. Very, very similar to the way we deal with talk today. certain legislatures, president, whoever brings something up, and all of a sudden the talk starts. Hey, did you hear? Did you hear? This is what they're planning. This is what they're looking to do. So the talk started. And I'm sure these guys knew what was about ready to happen. And then one day, when everything was finished, the groundwork had been laid, the idol had been erected, everything was set for the ceremony, and the law changed. The law changed. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had a difficult decision to make. Because, see, they had influential position within the government. They were well known, respected. Everybody was fine with their godliness, or wouldn't call it Christianity then, because they weren't Christians then, because Christ hadn't come yet. But we'll refer to them as Christians for our ability to understand. Their Christianity, if you will, was accepted. It was okay. They were wise. They were gifted. They were beneficial to the kingdom. And that was okay. But then one day, everything changes. Now all of a sudden, those guys that were beneficial, wise, kind, charitable, helped everyone around them, and gave good advice. Now the criminals. Instantly. Why? Because the law changed. You see, if they had emotional commitment to their cause, they would have went with the law, they would have fluctuated. But they had a courageous commitment. And so, after they're being addressed, this is where we pick up in the scripture, Nebuchadnezzar tells them, look, if you don't follow the law, I'm going to throw you in the fire. Not even a jail cell, not a pit, not going to lock them up. He's going to burn them alive. I'm literally going to light the fire and throw you in it. Now, I haven't went back and studied this, to be honest with you, but if I had to guess, I would say there's a good chance this has been done before. Because you don't see that anybody was too shocked that somebody was being thrown into the fire. So, this was, let's say common practice. I'm going to throw you in the fire. And they say, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. We know what we're doing. We don't have, we don't have to address this. We know where we stand. We know where you stand. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning, fiery furnace. And he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known unto you that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Again, a common story, we've heard it many, many times. But what I want to do throughout what we're going to talk about today, tonight, and what you'll see in the video, is we read this in the context that it was written a long time ago. That happened back then. It's something that we read about, right? It's something that we read about, and we know that it's been a long time since we've had to face issues like that. And so sometimes we kind of put it in its place and we use it for our benefit to get us emotionally committed, connected. But what we're going to see tonight is that there are people in the world right now that are facing their fiery furnaces.
Amen.
that are being maimed, drowned alive, beheaded, blown up, raped, used as animals, you name it. The atrocities that we've read of the past, the atrocities that we've read of a Nazi Germany, they're all being enacted today in modern times. And it's going on right now. And so what I want to do is mention a few things about this, our history, because this, what we've read tonight, is our heritage. It is in our lineage. It's in our spiritual DNA, this account of these 3 Hebrew children. And we're going to see clips and interviews of men and women and children that are facing this type of persecution today. And then I want to talk about us. About us. Because we need to have a proper perspective on where we truly are at in the American church. Because, 2 reasons. One, we have to have a proper perspective so we know how to proceed from here. So we know how to deal with today. So we know how shall we live. Because there's a lot of confusing things going on. There's a lot of, there's so much of today that it's like, yeah, oh, this is what you're saying is right, but this little, I'm not there with it. You know, I heard one of the presidential candidates today, we'll just say who they are. Ted Cruz gave a speech the other day, and after his loss in New York, and just yesterday. And he mentioned Bernie Sanders in his speech. And this is something that I've noticed for, about a year now, as we've been in this process for a long time. And he said this, comparing his message to Bernie Sanders, our diagnosis, if you will, our diagnosis is the same. If you listen to both of those candidates and they say, here's the problem, they're both saying the same things. But he said, my solutions are different. And so, as a Christian people, we ourselves at times are so divided amongst ourselves. Because, and I'm talking the bigger body here, not just here at Tabernacle of Praise, not in our little microcosm, if you will, but the bigger picture. There are many, many Christians today that see the same issues that you see the same problems that you see. Some have different solutions. Some have common solutions. But what do we do with all of this? Well, tonight, we don't search or hope to explain it all, because we can't. It would be impossible. But I do hope that as we leave tonight, we can at least leave with a better understanding or a quickening, if you will, in our spirits that help lead us, guide us, and maybe answer a few questions that we've had so that we can take the next step on our path. Okay? So that's what we're kind of hoping for tonight. Because the truth is, we don't have it as bad as what we think we do.
That's right.
That's the truth. And many of the times, many of the things we complain about or we fret over in America is mainly just the loss of luxury. Honestly. There are some horrible situations out there, but a lot of it stems from the loss of luxury. The other thing stems from fear, because a lot of times Christians have pulled themselves out of certain arenas out of fear, because they say, well, we can't do that here. But the truth is you can. The laws are still very open to Christian activity, if you will. They're still very open. Now, some of them are starting to become more stringent, yes. But now's not the time to tuck our tail and run. Now's our time to pursue. Now's our time to pursue. We just need some Davids to step out in front of the Goliaths. Because if you remember that account, it was David that stepped out. And once Goliath was down, that's when everybody else jumped on board.
Right.
They just needed a champion. They needed a leader. Some people, they want to do something. They just need to know what to do. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, hey, you do what you want with us. Here's a few things I want to point out before we move on. First of all, they said, our God is able to deliver us. They believed. It was more than emotional. They had a courageous commitment, an understanding, a faith that our God is able to deliver us. Threatened to be thrown in the fire. And the very one who had all the authority to do it in a heartbeat, they looked him straight in the eyes and said, our God can deliver us from you. Then the next thing, we notice that they say, he will deliver us out of your hand. Not only is he able, but we believe that his love toward us is so committed that he will not allow one of his children to be devastated at your hand. He will deliver us. We have the confidence that he loves us that much. A courageous commitment. They say, this is our God whom we serve. So it went even beyond just saying, yeah, there's this being up there that, if we cook it, it might give us gas. That was supposed to be funny. Okay, thank you for the, Get a being up there. There's this supernatural being that he's up there and he knows everything and he's able to do whatever he wants. But I don't know if he'll take care of me, and I don't have any personal engagement with him. I don't have any personal interaction with him. That wasn't the case here. They said, this is a God whom we serve. He's able to deliver us. He will deliver us. And we know this because we have a personal interaction with him on a continual basis. And I have the faith and confidence because I know who he is and I know that he knows me.
Amen.
You see, the relationship with me and my wife have, and I'm sure that some of you have people in your life. Maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your husband, maybe not, maybe it's someone else. But you've known them so long and been with them so long, and you're attached and you're united so much that you say, I know what they'll do in this or this circumstance. I don't have to worry about that. It's like Pastor Tyler's talking the other day about the phone and texting and all this and showing your wife your phone and vice versa and all that. We're sitting on the couch the other night and Beth's over here, texting somebody, and I just glance over. She's texting Brian. I was like, Brian? This is titled Brian. And she's texting, and he's answering, she's texting. I'm like, that's odd. Who's Brian? And it was a physician assistant, and she's had to make a video for her ER for competency training. And so today we went and we did that. I have no idea how I went there. Oh, yes, I do. Here's how I went there. There are some circumstances, I'm sure some people would have saw that and been like, oh, not again. Or maybe it would have planted seeds of doubt. I don't want to camp here too long, but talking about a committed relationship with God. How when you're committed to someone or you know someone so much that you know they'll come through. And I know in human relationships, for some of us, probably some of us in this place right now, that may have been damaged. Because humans are so imperfect, so foul. And that may have been damaged for you. But God is not a human. He is a supernatural, loving Father, creator of all things. And there's not one single person in history that he's ever failed. Ever. He's always came through. He's always came through. The Bible says he is not a man that he would lie. So I just wanted that to sink in this moment. Because I know that, again, many humans have been damaged by uncommitted or what was a committed situation. That somehow, some way, something was let down. But that wasn't the case in dealing with God. And he said, we serve him. We know him. He's came through for us. I don't want to spend too much time here because I do want to move on, but there's something I have to say about this part too, is this wasn't like the first experience these guys were having with God. You see, they were kidnapped from their homes. They were just living life, doing their thing. And it was when their nation was taken over, they were kidnapped from their homes. They were stripped from their families, brought into a foreign land to serve a foreign dictator. You see, through this process, they had already developed this relationship with God. And he had been there the whole time, leading and guiding each and every step. You see, he was with them when they were presented with the king's meat, and they didn't want to defile themselves with the king's food because they figured it was probably sacrificed unto idols, and it was a part of a paganistic worship, if you will. And they just wanted to stay so pure in that moment that they said, we don't want this. And then we know that Daniel, he was kind of their leader. He was a spokesman for them, and he talked them into not eating that and eating some type of bean soup or something. And he made a deal with the guy. He said, look, let us eat this for so many days. And if we start getting weak, if we start looking unhealthy, then we'll give in and we'll eat what you present us. And so he agreed. And if you don't know the account, you can read it in the book of Daniel. But what had happened, as most of us know, God came through and they ended up even looking healthier, being stronger, more energetic than everyone else. So not only did God come through and make them like everybody, just get them through the time, just barely enough to get by, but God supernaturally empowered them that they even stood out above and beyond. So by the time they had faced Nebuchadnezzar, they were very confident in saying, buddy, he's been here for us the whole time. And we're very confident that he'll continue to be here for us now. And then they make a very cool statement. Because see, sometimes we're so worried about what we say. Like sometimes we get freakishly paranoid about our words. Here's what I mean. You know, don't say that. Don't say that. And there's some truth to that, because the Bible says the power of life and death is in your tongue. But what was coming out of them next was more than words. It was what was deeply inside of them. Because they said, He's able to deliver us. He will deliver us out of your hand. And then they said, but if not? If not? What were they saying? They said, look, it doesn't matter if it happens the way we think it will, the way we want it to. It'll happen the way He wants it. If it doesn't happen our way, it will still happen. They believed in His sovereignty and that He acts on the basis of His own will and His own pleasure. And so what we're going to watch right now, again, I told you I like to talk a lot, but what we're going to watch right now is modern times in a different nation. And what you will see from some of the people interviewed is that same boldness, that same courage, that same commitment in a very, very dark situation. So go ahead and play that, please.
As the Iraqi army evaporates.
This as the terror group gains ground in Anbar province, some predicting a collapse of the area within hours.
ISIS forces was attacking Mosul.
Thousands of civilians, religious minorities fleeing an onslaught of violence.
Explosions start to be higher.
We watch horrific images of Christians being beheaded, slaughtered, their throats slit.
When they took me from the highway by gun and put in my eyes and chair for 9 days.
ISIS claims its militants are still on the streets of Tikrit.
ISIS have crucified a man in Syria.
Still there's this suspension of belief that would ever come here.
They eat Christians especially. We don't know why.
These are not unfamiliar images. We hear about violence against Christians in other parts of the world, especially countries like Iraq. And Jesus warned us that this would happen. If they persecuted me, He said, they will also persecute you. And yet the kind of violence that Christians experience in Iraq is practically unheard of here in the West. If you claim to belong to Jesus, then the people you'll meet in this series are your family. They're your parents, your brothers, your sisters. Why on earth are they willing to endure such sacrifice for the sake of Jesus? What's so great about Jesus that makes their sacrifice worth it?
Gets painted on your house in Mosul, then you're marked. N stands for the word Nasara. It's the Arabic word meaning Nazarene. It's the way Christians are identified in the Quran. So ISIS was using this to mark the Christians, to drive them out of Mosul. We went to Iraq to be with them, to see how we could help, to understand their stories. One brother we met that way was Nassim.
أنا سيد نسيم سمير متي من سكان نينوى.
My name is Nasim Samir Mati, and I am from Nineveh, Mosul. Married to Anwar and have 2 children, a boy and a girl, Nancy and Norman. I own a grocery store, and my wife is a housewife. We lived a normal life of work in the store and other work at home.
ISIS forces, they was attacking Mosul, and there was a big fight between them and the Iraqi army for 5 days.
Kareem is a pastor from Mosul. He was driven out along with everyone else, so he himself was a victim of the violence. But he's a pastor, and he's continued to shepherd his church after being driven out.
The 5th days, the Iraqi army left everything and ran away.
When the army fled, there were no authorities left in the city. Police joined ISIS or laid down their weapons as well. With no one to resist them, ISIS was able to come in and purge the city of everyone who disagreed with them. But Christians were especially targeted, either killed or driven out.
The ISIS come in the night, about 3 or 4 a.m. A lot of bombing and shooting.
They took over our town. They wrote none for Nasrani over my house and my store as a sign that we are Christians.
Just like the Nazis marked the property of Jews, Christian homes in Mosul have been marked with this red symbol. It's the Arabic letter N for Nasara, an early Islamic term for Christians.
And they told them, either you pay tax, or either like you donate, or like you give us like one of your daughters, like or girls for the jihad, or you turn to Islam.
There's no one caring what's happening. They kill people, they kidnap, they rape people, and no one cares. Our government don't care.
I've seen a few videos of the ISIS attacks because I wanted to actually get to know about what's happening, and it was kind of a shock because I didn't know it was that bad.
The Islamic State, or ISIS, stormed into Iraq's second largest city, Mosul, last summer and took control. From there, it pushed into the neighboring villages and towns across this region, known as the Nineveh Plains.
It's not an idle threat. It's real. They release footage and we kill them. Tell them, you're next.
Then we took our things, only clothes, and then we flee to this place.
Okay, when the Christians were driven out, and this is tens of thousands of people, it's 100 degrees, they begin this journey with nothing but the clothes on their back. They've lost all their possessions, all their money, and they're walking. And you think of the families, children, the elderly. They begin this journey walking in the heat and the difficulty. We found them in the city of Erbil and surrounding areas, sleeping in parks on the side of the road, coming to churches, really anywhere people could go, hungry, thirsty, and the threat of ISIS was very much at hand.
Thousands of them are everywhere. People were laid down in the streets. People everywhere in the city, in the parks. They were longing for a roof, just to stay under it. They're longing for food, to eat, to water, to drink, because they had no money, nothing.
When the Bible says we to present our bodies a living sacrifice, that's something great to read. I mean, we read it, but I see they were actually doing it.
These people, these Christians, they're our family. So when we saw them in this situation, we started to provide them with food, clothing, shelter. We brought them supplies who were donated to the Voice of the Martyrs and prepared by volunteers at our ministry. thought kept going through my mind. Each of them had a choice. They could have kept their future, their homes, all their possessions, but they chose to sacrifice them instead of denying Christ.
This life that I have, it's not anymore belong to me. It's belong to Christ, belong to Jesus. I have given all my life to Him, and He's using me in incredible ways. So really, when I think about it, even in these days when I'm facing difficulties, when I get caught by police, nothing is affecting me. Nothing can stop me from what I'm doing, because I know that He's protecting me.
Well, I used to be a pastor in my church in Mosul, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking care of my church members, and we are doing refugee work, relief to the displaced people. There's major need for places to live. There's some people live in unfinished buildings, unfinished houses, without windows, without doors.
When people fled to Erbil and other places, they were on the ground, they were in parks, they were in church meeting halls, they were anywhere. So as soon as we could, we started putting them in partially constructed buildings, people's homes, churches, really anywhere we could to give them some shelter, and they were packed. Everything you can imagine, from an awning to a fellowship hall, completely full of people, just to get them out of the sun, just to get them a place to sleep at night.
And this is the day God has given us to work and to help and to reach the people out for Jesus Christ and tell them there is a God who loves you and cares for you and will never forsake you.
There was a desperation for survival, but even more for that, I saw a hunger for God, people reaching out to Him.
The people are open for Jesus. When we talk with anyone about Jesus now, share the gospel with them, you can see a response. Before that, the people were busy with their life, but now they are coming by themselves to the church. And they're asking for prayer, they're asking for help, they're asking to know Jesus better.
There's something true about God. People often draw closer to God during times of need than in times of blessing. When God brought the Israelites into the desert for 40 years, He told them, when you get to the promised land, you will forget me. In the suffering of our persecuted family, we see once again many people drawing closer to God. After all, where else is there to turn?
People are coming to Christ, even from non-Christian backgrounds.
He Himself decided to leave the heaven and to be here on earth and to be as a Jesus Christ, incarnated in Jesus Christ, willingly, and to be here and to the way of the cross, and so to give salvation to everybody. So I would say, like, willingly, I'm staying here. I believe God has called me here to be in Iraq, and I believe at the same time, I am called to suffer with the Christ.
If I die, I die for Christ. Death is a gain. We finish from the suffering of this world. That's the real faith. It goes back to see, do I honestly believe that there is heaven? Do I honestly believe that Christ is alive, waiting for me?
But I think it's important to note the difference between a sacrifice and a loss. If something is lost, it's just completely gone. But I think whenever you talk about sacrifice, the word sacrifice implies that you're actually gaining something.
We experience here in this 6 months too many of God's promises. Like He's not letting us lost. He's not gonna let us be hungry or in need.
And so I think that we are encouraged to be able to sacrifice, to willingly give up something valuable, to willingly give up our own lives with the expectation, the promise that we gain Christ, and that's everything.
God always opens doors, even if we do not see Him. He sends people our way and tells them we are in need. Even if we do not see Him, He sends help.
And He's taking care of every single small thing in their life.
We left our homes having nothing, and we lost everything. But we did not lose our faith in Christ Jesus.
In the midst of all the suffering, we've seen that God's doing a wonderful thing. People are open to the gospel like never before. Those of us in the frontier missions community, frontier missionaries, who've been working in the region for decades and studying it all along since the advent of Islam, we've never seen an openness to the gospel like there is right now among the Muslims.
To tell you the truth, it is something really beautiful. It is something really enjoyable, like you enjoy to suffer with Christ. You enjoy like you are not a nominal Christian. You enjoy you are not Christian by name. You are not Christian by identification card. You're Christian by faith. You're Christian by behaviors. You're Christian by words. You're Christian by everything. And this is the beauty of being, a Christian.
Did you consider sacrifice to be part of the deal when you decided to follow Jesus? Is this the life we signed up for? Paul said that he presented himself a living sacrifice for the sake of the gospel. Would they paint the inn on your house, your apartment, your dorm room? Would you say, I am in?
They talked about we're not going hungry. He's supplying our needs. It's a joy seeing people come to Christ. They've kept the faith. They've kept the faith. They've lost their luxury, but they've kept the faith. There's other situations and occurrences that I've heard that there was, pretty wealthy families that were Christians and lost it all in a moment because ISIS came in and took it. And they went from having a lot of property to living in basically it might have been in small, but it's like an 8x8 box. I mean, it was just a family. And a couple of the people that were there interviewing and everything, some of the girls said, we have to get ready for church, or we have to change clothes or something. And so they just step over and pull a curtain, and they're changing right there within feet because they're just so cramped. So we see some true suffering that's going on in the world. But I want to shift gears, and I won't take long on this, I promise. But I do want to shift gears because where does that leave us? Because we don't live there. Okay? I'm sure that as we watch this, your heart goes out to them. You want to have compassion. You want, and sometimes I know when we see things like this, we kind of feel lost. Like, what do I do? I mean, I hate it, but and I understand it. I mean, that's human. That's where we're at. But let's focus on where we are as Christians in America and what we see going on around us. Okay? A few points that I want to make to remember is the sky is not falling, but the ground is shifting. The Chicken Little, he's always worried, the sky is falling. Everywhere, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. He gets hit in the head with an acorn or something, and he's just freaking out. And hey, I'm there too. You guys know I like to be involved in government. When a law changes or a stroke of the pen happens, makes me nervous. Makes me nervous. But the sky is not falling, but the ground is shifting. So we have to know how to live. We have to learn how to navigate in this chaotic culture. If we're going to be successful, if we're going to make it, if we're going to endure until the end, and we're going to fulfill our purpose in this life, like Brian was talking about when he was out there before he left the mic, he just can't leave the mic. He has to keep coming back for more. You ever notice that, Brian? But if we're going to live out our purpose, we've got to know how to live in this chaotic culture. So, you know, we remember Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, right? He's finding something wrong in everything. It's a beautiful day, you know? But he's got to find something wrong all the time, right? My mom, she used to always buy my dad little stuffed Eeyores and pictures of Eeyore and anything that had a little Eeyore, you know, because, you know, he was a good representation. Everything's bad. Nothing's good. We can't be Eeyores. Either we have the answer or we don't. Right? Either we have the answer or we don't. And if we have the answer, and God is who we say He is, we can't be Eeyore. But we've always got to be looking for the prize. He said, when you see these things happening, don't look down. Look up. Because there's some good news coming. Your redemption is getting close. We've got to go beyond the mentality of this soft thinking of, I'm a Christian, but fill in the blank. Yeah, I'm a Christian, but, you know, right? Either we are or we're not. That doesn't mean we have to be some hard-headed jerk. Christians are very understanding, very compassionate. Hey, look, there's a lot to be compassionate about today. Look, you know, abortion's on rampage, right? Now it's gotten better. Still a lot of babies being aborted. And guess what? There's women who are allowing it. And we care for those babies. We care for that life. What about that woman? Right? That's where the rubber meets the road. And we got to care. We got to care. We got to be there to help. We got to be there to show love, to show compassion. Compassion doesn't let your kids play in the street. Right? But compassion will call you to jerk them out of the street, maybe scold them a little bit, and then give them a hug. Say, I love you. I just don't want to see you get hurt. Right? There's a lot of different lifestyles today. A lot of crazy stuff. You guys know that. We don't have to go down the list. So we have to learn, and it's got to be learned. Learned it. Because it doesn't come natural for most people. And that is to take a bold stance with a loving, compassionate heart. You've got to find that balance. A bold stance with love, with compassion. So let's face it, some people act like idiots. Some people do some stupid stuff. But what's going to happen? I don't want to camp here. I know I said that 5 million times. But what's going to happen? And I'm not giving you the answer. I just want you to think about it. Challenge us. What's going to happen if a woman walks into this place that used to be a man, but now they're fully, physically transformed? They look, talk, act, or vice versa. That's the world we live in, guys. So we're going to have to learn to be bold, stand on the Word, but have compassion. Seek for understanding. How, and this is maybe this is what we should be asking God. How do we love? How do we love? Because face it, a lot of us don't know. I've prayed for love more times probably this past year than I ever in my life. Because what I've found, the more you're around people, the more you get around certain people, that you have a hard time loving. But Jesus himself says, love your enemies. love those that despitefully use you, that manipulate you, that stab you in the back. Wow. Pray for them. That's true Christianity. And we have to learn that. Because let's face it, you know, my favorite shirt is Jesus loves you, and I'm trying to. You know? Okay. Do not be shaped by this moment, but let the entire story shape the moment. In other words, don't let just what you've seen in front of you shape the rest of your eternity. We know we win. Look, what we viewed today, the reason they can still smile, there's another video, it's in the second video, one of the pastors, they grabbed him, blindfolded him, they kept him in chains for 9 days, busted his teeth with the butt of a pistol, and threatened his life, and kept him without food, and without anything to drink for I forget how long. I think he went without food for many, many days, and he went without drink for a few days, just enough to keep him alive. And when he got out, he went back to pastoring and preaching the gospel.
Amen.
So don't let this moment, that maybe the difficulty that you may be facing right now, the hardship, the confusion, I don't know what to do. I don't know how this is going to work out. Don't let that shape the rest of your life. This is a moment. A moment. We know the story. We know that he says this. In this world you will have trouble. You will have tribulation, as the King James Version puts it. But he says, be of good cheer, because I've overcome. He says, I have overcame. Be of good cheer. Don't despair. Don't fret. Yes, it may be uncomfortable. Yes, it may be scary. Yes, it may even at times be worrisome. But he's right there, and he's always on time. He's always on time. So let's not freak out over what's happening, but let's expose the fruitless deeds of darkness. How do we do that? You expose things in the dark by shining. You expose what's in the dark by shining light. Protesting has its place, I guess. But how much more of an impact could we make if we put protesting to the side and we simply turn the light on? We just turn the light on. There's a time to stand. There's a time to pause. There's a time to kind of take it in, disengage, get ourselves together so we can re-engage. Just a couple more points. I really like this. I forget exactly what this was called, but there were several people, Chuck Colson was one of them, that got together and they formed this creed, if you will, this pact. And a part of it says this, and I love it. It says, I will render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, representing government. Okay? The law, the rule of law. I will render unto Caesar what is Caesar's unbegrudgingly. But under no circumstance will I render unto Caesar what is God's. You see, there are some things that's just God's. And those are the things that you hold on to and that you can never give up and you can never let go of and you can never compromise on. Because it is what it is. And there is no backing down. There is no, well, let me see if I can understand. Yes, seek to understand their perspective, their perception, because perceptions aren't always correct. So they may have an incorrect perception, but if we can shine the light and give proper perspective to adjust their perception, then they can begin to live a life in the light with understanding. Okay. I tried to sound real smart, so I hope I didn't mess that up. 4 questions. 4 questions I want to ask because I don't want to leave here tonight, because like we said, when we leave here, we want to feel a little bit empowered, not emotionally, but courageously. Not empowered emotionally, but moved inside. And either a deeper commitment with courage, or at the very least, a commitment to seek more courage, to take another step, to be more committed. Number 1. So how do we act? What do we do? What is good that we can champion? We know certain things are shifting around us, but what good thing can you champion for your community, for your workplace, for your school, whatever the case may be, for your block, for your church? Wherever you are, whatever you do, what good thing can you be a champion for? What good thing can you be like David and march out in front of Goliath and say, I know with confidence that this is a good thing, God's in it, and I can shine the light. Number 2, what's missing? What's missing around you that you can contribute? Okay? We're real good at finding problems. Sometimes we're not so good on bringing solutions. What's missing in your world? What's missing in your workplace, your neighborhood, your organization, your church, your family? What's missing that you can contribute? You see, that takes all the focus off continually getting pelted by the negative, and that's you pulling up your britches and saying, I'm going to get busy. I'm going to do what I can do. I may not be able to do it all. I may not be able to do everything I want to do, but I can do something. I may not be able to run a marathon, but I can walk a block. Right? Do something. 3rd question. Remember, there's 4. What's evil that we can stop? Again, so many times we see evil around us. Let's face it, there are things going on today that are just, the only way you can explain it is evil. It's not a bad idea. It's not, well, that was a mistake. No, it's demonically inspired evil to bring devastation and destruction. The Bible even says the spirit of Antichrist is already at work within those who will allow it to work. So some stuff is flat out evil. So what's evil around you that you can stop? Because let's face it, we see things that we say, well, I can't stop that. What can I do about that? We see in the video, that's pure evil. And many of us look at that and go, what can I do about it? Okay, I get it. I get it. But what can you do? In your world, in your neighborhood, at your workplace, at your school, dare I say, at your church. What's evil that you can stop? You can stop. And number 4, what's broken that you can restore? What's broken that you can restore? Before I close, I just remember, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but look at the broken families today. The broken relationships. the broken children. If you want a reality check, see, a lot of us say, man, those kids today, whew, they're crazy. But if you dig into their world, there's a lot of those kids that have been very messed up by the people who have been. Stories are horrifying. And they happen on a daily basis around us. But they go unnoticed, not talked about. And one of the reasons is because a lot of kids are so darn tough. And when they're young, it's normal. Way we grow up, and that's how it is. And we don't hear much about it. What's broken that you can restore it? You know, there's only one lie that a preacher is allowed to tell, and that's the one when he says, I'm about ready to close. But that led me to think this, and this is kind of a call to application, if you will. Because again, we talked about these 4 questions, to ask yourself, what can I do? How can I help? And we're not looking at big, extravagant things, guys. We're not. I'm just saying, like, it could be in your family, just right there at home. I mean, maybe help. I don't know. Maybe you got a neighbor that God's been tugging on your heart to just do something nice for. I don't know. But whatever that is, go ahead and act on it. But I'm reminded of the scripture because we talk about being Christians, and Christianity and charity goes beyond just a belief or an act of kindness. Charity meets a need and then goes with it. You know what I mean? Whereas humanitarianism kind of meets the need and walks away. Right? So we take humanitarianism and social engineering, and we put that together, and all that comes out is a community that becomes a lab of a scientific experiment. So we can get our documentation and our statistics on the poverty issues in our nation. Humanitarianism plus social engineering. This gives you a good scientific lab, but it rarely meets the long-term need. But true charity comes alongside and says, let me show you. It doesn't just give a fish. It stays there long enough to teach to fish. And here's why I say all that, because I can put Bible with it. The Bible tells us, here's just a couple examples. I'll hit men and women. Okay? Paul told Timothy, teach men that are able to teach others. In other words, he's saying, what I give to you. See, he's saying, Timothy, I'm taking time with you. I'm mentoring you. I'm sharing my wisdom. I'm sharing my experience with you so that you can go further than I have. So you can learn these lessons earlier than I did. But then what I want you to do in return is then go share that with someone else. It's a process of mentoring. It's a process of discipleship. What did Jesus say to do? Go and make disciples. I don't want you to raise your hand, but how many of you have a disciple? Seriously, think about it. That wasn't just a thing in the Bible that, was good for back then. He said, go, make disciples. What are disciples? Disciples are students. Students of who? Students of Him. So we're going and we're sharing, we're making disciples, and we're pointing them to Christ. Paul said, follow me as I follow Him. So we're leading others on this path with us. So teach those who are able to teach others. Here's the other one. You want to act out your faith? Act out your Christianity? What does the Bible say? And this is it, I promise. And then I'll make myself shut up. But see, I get so excited I entertain myself. But what did he say? Somebody tell me. What did he tell the women of the church to do with the younger women? What? Teach them. Does anybody know what he told them to teach them? But that's exactly right. That's what I was going to say. In a nutshell, how to be a woman. Take these younger women. Teach them to be a woman. How to be a godly woman. Because now, and so you can get on the soapbox again, but I won't, I promise. But just look at the little girls' Halloween costumes. I mean, you know what I mean? Yes, sir.
Clay, you know the book that you gave us in the class?
Yes, sir.
I'm just about done with it, but all these stories that's in there are about people over there in the East that he either died or got beat up or put in prison. Different things happened to him. But as you read each story, at the end of it, they don't say, well, now send us this or send us that. The only thing they ask is pray for us. And everybody can do that.
Yes, sir.
That's the one thing they want is prayer. And it's strength. And they talk about sacrifice. When you sacrifice something, you're trying to get something better. That's what Jesus done. He sacrificed his life and he got something better, which was eternal life.
Exactly.
And that's what we try to do.
And that's exactly what he tells us. If you'll lose your life for my sake, amen, you'll find me. You'll have. Find somebody to mentor. Everyone in this room. And I know we're all at different levels of maturity. Different levels of knowledge, different levels of understanding. But everyone in this room can find somebody to wrap their arm around and say, how you doing today? And they don't even have to know you're doing it, but keep an eye on them. Say, God, show me. Show me who. Show me what little girl needs to grow up to be a virtuous woman. Because they may not have many examples today. Let's face it, over the past, 20, 30 years, many of our parents have been too busy trying to keep their own lives together that their children have raised themselves. And now we're seeing the impact of that it's had on our communities and our nation. So, find somebody. All right. We're going to end in just a second. Brother Lige.
I listened to your teaching tonight. There was Ezekiel and Jeremiah was talking about the time and season that they were in, and that what you were saying. And we see Nebuchadnezzar there because Belshazzar got in trouble for the things that he was doing, but yet he was still family. But Nebuchadnezzar got leniency. In other words, he got fat on what he was doing in the world system, the material. And Daniel was there, you realize, and was helping that man. Because if you read that fourth chapter, last two verses, how that Nebuchadnezzar came back to himself and give glory to the Lord. We are here, and we can read this word that we have, and we can see a lot of things going on. But we're here, and it's our time. And we can read the history that they've had and know where we're at today. And I think of Abraham, brother, I'm finishing up, where he had faith. And you would think that man had real faith. But his faith wavered one time.
Sure.
And he called his wife a sister because of the king. Okay? But one thing he didn't do, he didn't stagger at the promises of God. And neither should we. Because this word that we carry here, this Bible, is yea and amen.
Yes.
And it's very eternal. Very eternal. There's sometimes our desire can't even take us where we want to be, even though we're here tonight. And each one of us is doing a good thing of being here. It's good that we're here. And while we're here, we're doing what you're saying, and we see our pastor. He can only do so much. But we're here in stewardship and doing all that we can do. And we're doing it joyfully because a lady and a man that wins souls, like you said tonight, is wise. And he said, be as wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove, but be ye wiser than that serpent. Amen. And be able to understand where we're at today.
Right.
And to know who we are.
Right.
He said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will do what it says.
That's right.
Thank you, brother.
Exactly. And when he was talking about, he was saying, be wiser, not Budweiser. So.
No. And there's crowns waiting.
That's right.
If we endure to the end, and those people, they're not just us here that endure to the end. When he comes back, they will receive a crown for his glorious appearing, an incorruptible crown. That's what we're after. Each one of you can have that prize. Amen. Running this race that we're running. And we can know times and seasons. Same as he's coming back on that white horse. And the same as that people are afraid the world's going to explode. But it's not, because there's some things that's going to happen. A 10,000-year millennial reign. But yet, I look, amen, as that man said, for the city. Amen. It's builder and maker's God, not made by hand.
Right.
And this rock that came moving out of Babylon that we're talking about in this system, Tim Brothers said, I'm not bowing to that. I'm going on to that other city, folks. Amen.
That's talking about the person to the prize. Let's all stand. That's, when we read those words of Paul, he had a courageous commitment. And that's exactly what he said. I'm pressing for the mark. He said, I have my eye on the prize.
Amen.
And there is a mark. There is a place that I intend to be. And I shall press to get there. I shall press to get there. So be strong, be of good courage.